Welcome, Inquisitive Souls. I'm your host, Cyan, and thank you for tuning in to the Age of Alchemy podcast. Episode 3 is called The Masters. The ultimate purpose is complete mastery of the mind over the material world, the harnessing of human nature to human needs, said by the great Nikola Tesla. The masters of our world seem to have touched what Terence McKenna refers to as alchemical gold. This, of course, is a metaphor. However, it is nothing short of our continuity. They volunteer to look like fools in their times and endure the painful rite of passage that we all know awaits us when stepping onto the path of mastery. Without these people, just imagine how dull, empty, and mundane your life would actually be. A world devoid of color, depth, and understanding. I don't know about you, but the simple reminder of the world around us being crafted through the eye of a visionary just to move humanity a millimeter closer to another checkpoint of progress just fascinates me. For example, the buildings around us, our cars, the devices we use, the paintings in our museums, and the poetry being taught in a 10th grade literary arts class as standard education was once a thought in someone's mind that if not watered and fed, would not exist. These masters have all left us a gift. Pioneering is what allows shifts to evolve itself into our way of life. How we distribute food across the world, communicate with one another, or know what steps are needed in a fine arts oil painting because, well, the masters showed us a way. They sacrificed their social life, sleep, and even their very livelihoods to chip away at a sculpture that would enthrall generations to come. The masters we often look up to seem to have acquired the impossible. We see them as phenoms, one of a kind, special, because, well, the average person is just average. But that's a fucking lie. Whoever told you that you can't be amongst the masters is severely out of touch with themselves. They have settled for average. They are afraid of anything beyond it. Because in actuality, their default mode is comfortable. And well, as I said before, stepping down a path of self-mastery absolutely 100% involves being completely uncomfortable at times. I, for one, am not fully actualized by any means. I don't consider myself a master yet. But that's just because I am honest with myself and can truthfully say that I am a work in progress. Every day brings me different challenges, but the more I move through the world, consciously challenging this version of myself, the more tangible and possible it seems to master myself. So, who are the masters? The ones who have earned that title? Well, it may vary depending on who you ask. I'm not going to sit here and fluff and tell you that I too don't have my favorites. Some masters speak to us and some don't. And it's okay to be biased, having a list of people out there who you think have reached a certain level of mastery and have inspired or awakened something in you. For anyone who knows me, my list is pretty damn long, but to keep it short, there are 3 distinct masters I want to talk about in today's episode. What they contributed to the world and my interpretation of their legacy. It's only appropriate to start off with Nikola Tesla. For years he has fascinated me and is a symbol of what is possible when one is in unison with science and spirituality. Tesla knew that the way he saw the world compared to other scientists in the 1920s was indeed unique. He understood very well that the work he was doing scientifically was for the future. That being said, he had absolutely no agenda to accumulate any level of wealth, fame, or accolades. He had one goal in mind, which was to master it. He desired to use his own refinement to assemble inventions that would outlast his own life and serve as a gift to the future. Tesla said, "My method is different. I don't rush into actual work. When I get a new idea, I start at once building it up in my imagination and make improvements and operate the device in my mind. When I have gone so far as to embody everything in my invention, every possible improvement I can think of, and when I see no fault anywhere, I put concrete into the final product of my brain." This quote reveals Tesla's unique approach to invention, highlighting his reliance on visualization and mental experimentation before physically creating his groundbreaking devices. It actually perfectly aligns with my most previous episode called The Dream, where I talk about the importance of using the tool of visualization in order to bring back ideas that can mean transforming yourself, thus the world around you. Nikola Tesla, renowned for his pioneering work in electricity and electromagnetism, also harbored a deep spiritual side that influenced his scientific endeavors. This aspect of Tesla's life is often overshadowed by his technological achievements, but it played a significant role in shaping his understanding of the universe and his approach to invention. Tesla believed in a harmonious universe, governed by fundamental principles of energy, vibration, and frequency. He was convinced that if we understood these principles, we could harness the true power of the natural world. This belief stemmed from a blend of scientific insight and a deeper, quasi-spiritual sense of connection with the cosmos. Energy, vibration, and frequency. Tesla thought that the universe was a symphony of alternating currents, with all matter essentially being composed of energy and different frequencies. This view definitely mirrored Eastern philosophies and spiritual teachings that speak of the universe in terms of energy and vibration. And I'm sure if you've heard of Tesla, you've heard the quote a million times. If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. While Tesla is celebrated for his contributions to science and technology, understanding his spiritual side provides a more holistic view of him as a thinker who sought to bridge the material and the immaterial worlds. His life and work exemplify the belief that science and spirituality can coexist and enrich each other, offering insights that are both profound and practical. Nikola Tesla was just a kid, essentially, who immigrated from Serbia to New York in the early 1900s because he heard of a pioneer named Thomas Edison, who was at that point world famous for his direct current and light bulb. Tesla admired him, to say the least, and went to New York with the sole purpose of meeting and working for Mr. Edison. When he got his foot into the door, he worked tirelessly. Most days, Tesla would work 20-plus hours with virtually no sleep. It didn't take long for Edison to notice him, wondering who the hell is this young guy who doesn't leave. And at one point, Tesla worked 84 hours straight on absolutely no sleep. This began a mentorship between the two, and slowly but surely, Nikola Tesla revealed himself to be an absolute fucking genius to the likes of Thomas Edison and anyone in high status of the time with his unique take on engineering. Famous silent film actors wanted to be around him, other scientists and women who were famous were crushing on him. But everyone knew that there was something odd about this man. He had a strong case of OCD. And there are many examples of this, but one being is that Tesla liked to swim, so he swam at a public pool every day and had to swim 33 laps. If he lost count ever, he would have to start over from zero. He was definitely compelled by the number 3. Eventually, Tesla and Edison had a falling out because, let's just say, Edison was a bona fide opportunist with nothing but status and money on his mind and saw Tesla's alternating current, which would go on to be a gateway into the next 100 years of technology, as a competition. He tried convincing everyone that it was dangerous in an attempt to ruined Tesla's reputation and any chances of financing his next scientific endeavors. Tesla didn't have a competitive bone in his body, but he definitely did not like Edison. This was a classic case of don't meet your heroes. In fact, in 1912, Tesla and Edison were both offered by the Nobel Committee to share the physics prize. Tesla declined that prize and the $20,000 that would have come with it. He spoke 7 languages, was a ferocious reader, and said to have a photographic memory. Tesla believed in abstinence and supposedly had little to no sexual desires, as he would speak of the Kundalini energy being sacred and that sex would rob him of that energy that could be used on his work. As a young child, Tesla was said to have an overactive imagination. Often people would describe him as seeing things that weren't there. Some may call Tesla a scientist. Others may call him a mystic, an eccentric, idealist, odd, overrated, underrated. Nikola Tesla was a man who was constantly thinking about the future, but he was also crafting it, hoping that one day every human being on Earth would have access to free and wireless energy. Most importantly, he wanted each human to understand that the unseen universe of energy, frequency, and vibration was telling us something. He wanted the human race to listen to that and use it to better understand who we are. Tesla was a master. I also like to think of him as a humanitarian, at least that's how he would also describe himself. So I like to close my eyes and imagine Nikola Tesla, sitting at his desk in his New York apartment exactly 100 years ago from today. He is his most productive and at the height of his career. His eyes are closed, imagining someone like you or me utilizing his inventions and pondering about the nature of the universe, just as he did. That is pretty damn trippy when you think about it. Maybe Tesla knew that time wasn't linear, or maybe he knew that the future was simply accessed by becoming it. Nikola Tesla died of old age, most likely with dementia, in his famous New Yorker apartment, alone and totally broke. He never married or had children, and the government confiscated all of his research. However, I think it's safe to say that he birthed the 21st century of innovation. And only a master can do something like that. Let's get into our second master. You may think I'm going to say Leonardo da Vinci, Beethoven, Steve Jobs, or Albert Einstein. I'd like to talk about a person who barely anyone I meet has ever heard of. In fact, the history books barely talk about her. Master number 2 was an astronomer, mathematician, and leader of the Neoplatonic school of philosophy. Her name was Hypatia. Like Nikola Tesla, Hypatia was at the peak of her performance in the intellectual hub of the world, Alexandria, Egypt. She fascinated and taught her students of different religious backgrounds with her work on number theory, mathematics, likely including the Euclidean elements of fundamental texts on geometry. She also taught astronomy, sharing her knowledge about the motion of celestial bodies, possibly including the Ptolemaic model of the universe, the accepted astronomical paradigm of her time. The philosophy within her curriculum was Neoplatonism, a school of thought that sought to synthesize Plato's philosophy with her traditions. She likely taught her students about the nature of the universe, the soul, and the process of intellectual and spiritual practices. Hypatia was also heavily involved in the design and construction of scientific instruments such as the devices that measure density of fluids. She also invented the astrolabe for ship navigation. As you can imagine, for a woman to be a teacher of any caliber during this time, or pioneering for that matter, it was practically unheard of anywhere else. Hypatia's teachings were influential in her time. She attracted many students across the Mediterranean world. Her approach was characterized by a commitment to logic, empirical evidence, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake, principles that earned her reverence. Hypatia of Alexandria was lucky enough to be raised by her father Theon of Alexandria, a highly respected mathematician. She took his teachings along with Plato's and was said to make astronomical discoveries. During this time, there was a strong religious and political tension in Alexandria, Egypt, between Christians, Jews, and Muslims. She eventually found herself at the very epicenter of this trifecta of civil unrest, and for some time managed to calm the political waters with her philosophy. However, the religious tensions grew stronger, and she inevitably became a target by the very people that used to be her students. Imagine a literal civil war happening and being directly blamed for many of the tensions, given that you don't subscribe to any of the religions or politics that are all running full speed toward one another with the intention to kill and take over. Hypatia was by no means a conformist, even when her life depended on it. It is believed that some of her students attempted to convince her in reforming her beliefs solely to the Christian faith, but she already made up her mind to always question what she believed in. Soon after, as Alexandria, Egypt was engulfed in flames, Hypatia was brutally tortured in public and murdered by the hands of a Christian mob. Behind every historical tale, especially this far back, there's always some ambiguity. We can never truly tell exactly how these events unfolded, or who was in the right or wrong, or what the intentions were behind hiding or destroying a vast amount of intellectual documents. But we can take Hypatia's logical approach to this meditation. It is more than likely that she figured something out. She may not have known exactly how the cosmic function worked, or perhaps that her geometry was flawed. However, in my view, she was and is a master. She, like Nikola Tesla, was, indeed, ahead of her time. Whatever she said in her lectures to those young men must have disrupted their reality to the extent of proving Plato's cave allegory, underscoring the dark side of human nature, one that smells of denial, envy, and resistance for the veil lifting. Hypatia of Alexandria is a master because her spirit is alive and well, because a 28-year-old woman from Ohio, 1,609 years later, is inspired and motivated to also wonder about the cosmos and transmit that curiosity through something called the internet to other inquisitive souls on a global platform. Despite there was clearly an attempt to erase her from history. I'm a huge film buff and recommend watching the film about Hypatia called Agora. I think it was beautifully done. That leads me into our third and final master of today's episode. Speaking of the art of film, one of the masters who is around today is our beloved Hayao Miyazaki, the visionary of Studio Ghibli. I grew up on these films and now have an affinity for storytelling because of him and many others who have mastered the art of cinema. Hayao Miyazaki is renowned for his ability to blend imaginative storytelling with deep symbolic themes, often exploring the relationship between humanity and nature, the journey from childhood to maturity, and the clash between traditional values and modernity. Here are some of the most popular animated masterpieces if you're amongst the people who are unfamiliar with these films. My favorite being Spirited Away. This film is a coming-of-age story that symbolizes the transition into maturity. It explores themes of greed and the loss of innocence. The bathhouse in the film could be seen as society with all its complexities, and the main character, a young girl who is on a journey symbolizing the personal growth and resilience. The aesthetic is a rich tapestry of Japanese folklore with a unique blend of the fantastical and the mundane, creating a surreal world of both inviting and mysterious elements. Another beautiful masterpiece was Howl's Moving Castle, showing us themes of self-discovery, love, and the futility of war. The moving castle itself, I think, represents the ever-changing nature of life and the capacity for transformation within everyone. Taking place in a time of intense war, it remarkably displayed the impact of war on us as individuals and the environment. The style and captivating uniqueness of the castle embodies elements of steampunk and traditional fantasy Miyazaki was a genius at showcasing. One of Miyazaki's earliest films was Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, released in 1984. It introduces many of the themes that would become central to his work, and the portrayal of a post-apocalyptic world where humanity must learn how to coexist with a dangerous and toxic environment inhabiting giant radioactive insects. The landscape in this film is nothing short of expansive, with intricate designs of both the natural world and technology graciously illustrating the contrasts and interdependence between the two. Although I wasn't born until 1996, Spirited Away came out at the peak of my childhood innocence in 2001. I remember being dazzled, inspired, and even frightened at times, but watching Spirited Away 3 feet away from our box of a TV with my siblings and being captivated by the surrealism would later influence my creativity as I would continuously revisit these impeccable stories through my teens and adulthood. Although these themes are patterns we find in Hayao Miyazaki's work, he thought of his work as not specifically intending to spread a message per se, but to simply aid the person who watches his films to look within themselves. He made a beautiful and genuine statement regarding that. Creating is not about conveying a message or articulating logic. It's about discovering the pleasure hidden within you. I try to remind myself of this when creating my own art because I would not prefer to tell people what things they should be seeing or what it should mean to them. I would much prefer Miyazaki's intention. Miyazaki was a perfectionist. He often had strong creative differences with the producers and financiers of his films. For Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, he would face skepticism, having to first adapt the story into a manga to prove the visibility. In the beginning of his career, working in the animation industry, he worked long hours under difficult conditions. The industry was not as established or respected as it is today, and animators often face extremely low pay and high pressure to meet deadlines. Miyazaki persisted, however, often at the expense of his own health. But his high standards and clear vision for results he was dedicated to meeting led him into paving a road for future animators to captivate audiences around the world, ultimately becoming the GOAT of animation. Hayao Miyazaki clearly cared deeply about certain issues. He saw a magic in childhood innocence, and he tirelessly worked towards his truest artistic expression. When we can humanize the unfoldment of a child discovering thrill and adventure, the lessons and trials, and the opportunity and purpose, there is a reminder of a tiny flame we forgot about. and a land where anything is possible when immersed into our imagination. A master in the art of cinema can change someone's heart in a matter of a few hours, more or less, with color, transition, character development, and a soundtrack on a screen. Pure magic. Nikola Tesla, Hypatia of Alexandria, Hayao Miyazaki, and many, 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 many more masters have each gone through their character development, consciously, creatively, purposefully, strategically, and lovingly, so that you can find the hidden pleasure within yourself and to become a master. You may not feel like a master, and that's okay. But take a long, hard look at yourself in the mirror and simply say, I am not a master yet. Shout out to Rick Rubin, who reminded me of that recently. Don't say you can't do it. Say you haven't done it yet. Hypatia of Alexandria candidly said, life is an unfoldment, and the further we travel, the more truth we can comprehend. To understand the things that are at our door is the best preparation to understand those that lie beyond it. As Tesla implied in the beginning of this episode, humans need masters. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please like, follow, and share if you haven't already. Stay tuned for episode 4 called The Symphony. From the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for listening. I love you all, and God